Step into the shadows of a quaint suburban neighborhood where the darkest secrets hide behind white picket fences. In the year 1971, a monstrous act shattered the illusion of the American dream within the walls of an opulent Victorian mansion in Westfield, New Jersey. John Emil List, a seemingly perfect son, husband, and father, meticulously planned and executed a heinous crime that would leave the nation in shock and disbelief. Concealing financial struggles and a troubled family life behind a carefully constructed veneer of normalcy, List's dark secret remained hidden for nearly 2 decades. It was not until a neighbor who had seen his clay bust on America's Most Wanted recognized the chilling resemblance and alerted the authorities that the truth about the elusive fugitive finally came to light. Welcome back to True Crime Expresso, where we delve deep into the dark abyss of solved and unsolved crimes and brooding mysteries from every corner of the planet. Join us as we embark on a chilling journey into the heart of one of America's most infamous crimes, the harrowing story of John List. A man consumed by his maniacal pursuit of an unattainable perfection, as he forever etched his name in the annals of history as the perpetrator of a crime that shook the nation to its core. John Emil List, a man of intriguing background, was born on September 17, 1925, in the city of Bay City, Michigan. He grew up as the only child in a devoted German-American family, with his parents, John Frederick List and Alma Barbara Florence List, imparting strong Lutheran values to him. Following his high school graduation from Bay City Central High in 1943, John List embarked on a significant journey by enlisting in the United States Army during World War II, where he served as a laboratory technician. Tragically, he lost his father within the same time period. Honorably discharged in 1946, John pursued higher education at the esteemed University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, obtaining both a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in accounting. He also earned a commission as a second lieutenant through ROTC. This academic and military background laid the foundation for the compelling events that would shape his future. In November 1950, with the Korean War in full swing, John's life took another turn as he was called back to active military duty. Stationed at Fort Eustis in Virginia, fate brought him in contact with Helen Morris Taylor, a resilient widow whose husband had tragically fallen in action during the war in Korea. Helen lived nearby with her daughter Brenda, and the two families soon found solace and companionship in each other's company. Their bond deepened, and on December 1, 1951, John and Helen exchanged vows in a heartfelt ceremony in Baltimore, Maryland. Following their union, the newlyweds and Brenda packed their bags and ventured to the picturesque landscapes of Northern California. The Army recognized John's exceptional accounting skills, which led to a reassignment to the Finance Corps. Following the completion of his second tour in 1952, John returned to civilian life and began a career journey that showcased his accounting prowess. He first found work at an accounting firm in the bustling city of Detroit, Michigan, before taking on the role of an audit supervisor at a paper company located in Kalamazoo. It was during this time that his family expanded, with 3 children being born into the List household. By 1959, List's dedication and expertise had increased him to the esteemed position of general supervisor within the company's accounting department. However, despite his professional success, his personal life was fraught with challenges. Helen, his wife, battled with alcoholism, and her instability created a tumultuous environment for the family. In 1960, his stepdaughter Brenda got married and left the household. Seizing a new opportunity, John relocated with the rest of his family to Rochester, New York, where he secured a promising job at Xerox. His career continued to flourish, and over time, he climbed the ranks to become the Director of Accounting Services. In 1965, John's career path took yet another twist when he accepted a prestigious position as Vice President and Comptroller at a prominent bank in Jersey City, New Jersey. The family, along with John's mother, moved into an impressive 19-room Victorian mansion known as Breeze Knoll, located at 431 Hillside Avenue in the charming town of Westfield, New Jersey. John Emil List seemed to embody the perfect image of a devoted son, husband, and father. Residing in the splendid New Jersey mansion, which boasted an impressive 19 rooms, including a ballroom, elegant marble fireplaces, and a stunning Tiffany skylight, The List family appeared to be living the epitome of the American dream. With his mother, wife, and 3 children by his side, John portrayed the image of a loving and prosperous family. Their devout Lutheran faith was evident in their weekly routine of attending church every Sunday, where John also dedicated his time as a Sunday school teacher. From the outside, everything seemed picture perfect. However, the events that transpired in the following years would shatter the illusion of perfection and reveal a mystery that would grip the nation. In 1971, at the age of 46, John List suffered a significant blow when he lost his job at the bank. His subsequent attempts to secure new employment didn't bear fruit, and he was left in a precarious financial situation. Instead of confiding in his family about the loss of income, he chose to keep it hidden, shouldering the burden alone. Seeking solace and a semblance of normalcy, John spent his days at the train station, immersing himself in the daily newspaper. However, to maintain the facade of stability, he resorted to a clandestine and unethical path. He began skimming money from his mother's bank accounts, using the funds to pay the mortgage without anyone's knowledge. Despite the desperate circumstances, John adamantly refused to turn to welfare support. He couldn't bear the thought of enduring the excruciating embarrassment it would bring upon his family within their tight-knit community. Accepting welfare would go against the principles of self-sufficiency that he had been taught by his father. The tragic and horrifying turn of events that unfolded in John List's life is both shocking and deeply disturbing. Faced with a seemingly insurmountable financial crisis and an overwhelming sense of despair, John arrived at a decision that defies comprehension: to kill his own mother, wife, and children. On the fateful day of November 9, 1971, John murdered his entire family using a 9mm Steyr 1912 semi-automatic handgun and his father's Colt .22 caliber revolver. As his children were away at school, John coldly executed his wife Helen with a shot to the back of her head, followed by his elderly mother Alma, who was shot above the left eye. When his daughter Patricia, aged 16, and younger son Frederick, aged 13, returned home, they tragically met the same fate, each being shot in the back of the head. The sheer brutality of these acts is heart-wrenching to contemplate. After committing these heinous acts, John proceeded with chilling calmness. He prepared himself lunch, then visited the bank to close his and his mother's accounts, attempting to maintain a facade of normalcy amidst the darkness that consumed him. He then attended his elder son John Frederick's soccer game at Westfield High School. However, upon returning home with his son, List turned his violence towards John Frederick, who bravely tried to defend himself against the onslaught. The evidence of misfires indicated the desperate struggle that took place before the final, tragic outcome. The gruesome aftermath of John List's horrifying actions painted a chilling picture within the confines of his lavish mansion. The lifeless bodies of his wife and children were meticulously placed on sleeping bags in the grand ballroom, a stark contrast to the somber reality that unfolded. John's own mother, Alma, tragically lay untouched in her apartment in the attic. A 5-page letter addressed to his pastor was discovered on his study desk. John attempted to offer a twisted justification for his unspeakable deeds. He claimed that he saw the world engulfed in too much evil, and in a misguided attempt to save their souls, he believed the only recourse was to take their lives. It was a horrifying rationale that defied any semblance of reason or compassion. However, it became apparent that despite his cold-hearted actions, John was not willing to face the earthly consequences of his crimes. He meticulously cleaned the crime scenes to the point where he erased his presence from every photograph in the mansion with scissors. He contacted his children's schools, concocting a story about a family trip to visit their ailing maternal grandmother in North Carolina. As the darkness of the tragedy settled over the List mansion, a tragic twist of fate unfolded. Helen's mother, who was supposed to visit the family in Westfield, was unable to make the trip due to her illness. In a chilling revelation, John later admitted that had she made the journey, she would have become his 6th victim, falling prey to the same unspeakable fate that befell her daughter and grandchildren. Seeking to cover his tracks even more, John stopped all milk, mail, and newspaper deliveries. Neighbors noticed that all the rooms in the mansion remained illuminated day and night, yet there seemed to be no signs of life or activity within its walls. John slept in the same mansion where his lifeless family lay, continuing to walk out the door each morning as if everything was normal. As the weeks passed, the constant glow of lights and the empty windows of the mansion drew the curiosity of the neighbors. Something was amiss, and their suspicions grew stronger with each passing day. The discovery of the List mansion on December 7, 1971, was nothing short of haunting and surreal. As the authorities entered the grand residence, they were greeted by the eerie sound of organ music piped through the intercom system, further adding to the chilling atmosphere. The once opulent mansion now stood silent witness to the unspeakable tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Amidst this macabre scene, they stumbled upon a 5-page letter penned by none other than John List himself. He claimed that the bloodied bodies lying in the ballroom were, in his eyes, a result of mercy. In his twisted mind, he believed he had saved the souls of his beloved family members through these heinous acts. This letter served as a window into the depths of John List's disturbed and delusional psyche. The small town of Westfield, New Jersey, which had seen relatively few violent crimes in recent years, found itself thrust into the national spotlight following the horrific events at the List mansion. The heinous crime became one of the most notorious felonies in the state since the tragic kidnapping and murder of Charles Lindbergh Jr. In response to the devastating discovery, a massive nationwide manhunt was launched to find John List, the man responsible for the deaths of his entire family. Law enforcement agencies tirelessly pursued hundreds of leads in their effort to track him down, but each one proved to be a dead end, leaving them frustrated and without answers. John's cunning attempt to erase his identity and obscure any traces of his whereabouts further complicated the investigation. All reliable photographs of him had been destroyed, which made it difficult for the authorities to disseminate his image and garner public assistance in locating him. The family car was found abandoned at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City, but there was no concrete evidence to suggest that John had boarded a flight from there. As the community of Westfield mourned the loss of Helen and her 3 children, Alma's body was flown to Frankenmuth, Michigan, and laid to rest at the St. Laurens Lutheran Cemetery. Meanwhile, Helen and her children were buried at the Fairview Cemetery in Westfield, where they would forever remain a poignant reminder of the tragedy that had befallen them. The dark legacy of Breeze Knoll, the mansion where the horrifying tragedy unfolded, endured even after the List family deaths. The Grand Mission remained vacant and hauntingly empty in the aftermath of the murders. However, it met a tragic fate of its own when, in August 1972, just 9 months after the heinous act, the mansion was engulfed in flames and completely destroyed. The fire that consumed Breeze Knoll was officially ruled as arson, but despite thorough investigations, no suspects were identified, and the case remains unsolved to this day. The destruction of the mansion took with it the ballroom's exquisite stained glass skylight, rumored to be an original piece by the renowned Tiffany, valued at a staggering $100,000 at that time, which is equivalent to $700,000 in 2023. Alongside the loss of the magnificent skylight, the mansion's history and memories were forever erased in that blaze, adding a somber chapter to the already tragic tale of the List family. In the wake of the destruction, a new house was constructed on the site in 1974. After committing the heinous murders of his family in 1971, John List vanished into thin air. However, the FBI would later uncover his trail and discover that he had traveled by train from New Jersey to Michigan and then to Colorado. In early 1972, John List settled in Denver, assuming a new identity under the name Robert Peter Bob Clark, using the name of one of his college classmates whom he claimed to have known, although the real Bob Clark denied any knowledge of List. In Denver, John managed to conceal his true identity and past and secured an accounting job. From 1979 to 1986, he served as the comptroller at a paperbox manufacturing company outside of Denver. During this time, he immersed himself in a Lutheran congregation, presenting himself as a devout and helpful member of the community. He even ran a carpool for shut-in church members. While attending a religious gathering, John encountered Dolores Miller, who worked as an Army PX clerk. The two struck up a relationship and got married in 1985. The couple moved to the Brander Mill neighborhood of Midlothian, Virginia, in February 1988, with John continuing to use the alias Bob Clark. In Virginia, he resumed work as an accountant at a small accounting firm called Madrea, Joyner, Kirkham, and Woody. John List's ability to reinvent himself and blend seamlessly into new surroundings allowed him to remain a fugitive for an astonishing 18 years. During this time, he built a new life, appearing to be an upstanding member of society, while the truth of his past remained hidden. The bizarre and perplexing case of D.B. Cooper, the notorious airline hijacker, led to an unexpected twist in the case of John List. In 1972, John was proposed as a suspect in the D.B. Cooper air piracy case due to the timing of his disappearance, which occurred just 2 weeks before the airline hijacking. There were multiple matches to the hijacker's description, which added to the suspicions surrounding John. The reasoning behind considering John as a potential suspect rested on the belief that someone accused of mass murder like John might feel they had nothing to lose and be capable of such a daring crime as the D.B. Cooper hijacking. There was no direct evidence to implicate him, and ultimately, the FBI no longer considers him a suspect in the hijacking. While his name occasionally resurfaces in Cooper-related articles and documentaries, the lack of conclusive evidence has led to his exclusion as a suspect in this notorious unsolved case. The long and elusive run of John List finally came to an end in 1989. After 18 years of living under an assumed identity, the story of the List family murders was recounted on the television program America's Most Wanted. The show featured an age-progressed clay bust created by forensic artist Frank Bender, which bore a striking resemblance to List's actual appearance. Just 2 weeks after the broadcast, a neighbor from Denver recognized the description and immediately called the police. On June 1, 1989, List was apprehended at a Richmond accounting firm, still using his alias. He continued to maintain his false identity for several months, even after being extradited to Union County, New Jersey, in the face of mounting evidence against him. However, the weight of the evidence became undeniable. A fingerprint match with List's military records and evidence found at the crime scene left little room for doubt. Finally, on February 16, 1990, John List could no longer maintain his deceptive facade. He confessed his true identity, bringing to an end the decades-long mystery surrounding the whereabouts of the man responsible for the brutal murder of his own family. He stated that to keep their financial troubles from spiraling further, John diverted money from his mother's bank accounts to prevent a default on his mortgage. As the year progressed, the family's financial problems grew increasingly strained. In an effort to keep the family afloat, List encouraged his children to seek part-time work. While he purportedly framed this as a means to teach them maturity and responsibility, in reality, it was a desperate attempt to ease the family's financial burden. The tragic events in John List's life were further compounded by the challenges he faced within his marriage to Helen. Unbeknownst to John, Helen was not only battling alcoholism, but also suffering from untreated tertiary syphilis, which she had contracted from her first husband. Helen had concealed her condition for a staggering 18 years, keeping the truth hidden from both John List and her physicians. According to trial testimony, Helen had pressured John into marriage by falsely claiming to be pregnant, a lie that compelled him to marry her. She insisted on getting married in Maryland, where premarital syphilis tests were not mandatory, which allowed her to keep her condition a secret. Over the years, Helen's health progressively deteriorated due to the unchecked progression of the disease exacerbated by her excessive alcohol consumption. The combination of these factors led to a distressing transformation, as described in testimony, from an attractive young woman to an unkempt and paranoid recluse. Helen's behavior became increasingly erratic, and she frequently and publicly humiliated John, comparing his sexual prowess unfavorably with that of her first husband. The strain of dealing with Helen's health issues and her emotional and psychological instability undoubtedly took a toll on John's mental and emotional well-being. These factors, along with the mounting financial difficulties, contributed to the tragic events that unfolded in the List family home on that fateful day in 1971. The court-appointed psychiatrist shed light on John List's troubled mental state, testifying that he suffered from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. According to the psychiatrist's testimony, John saw only two possible solutions to his dire situation. The first option was to accept welfare to alleviate his financial struggles. However, John vehemently rejected this choice. Faced with what he perceived as a moral dilemma, List saw only one other way to spare his family from further suffering and potential disgrace. He believed that by killing his family, he could send their souls to heaven, saving them from the hardships and humiliation of life in poverty. In the eyes of the law, justice finally caught up with John List as he was convicted on April 12, 1990, of 5 accounts of first-degree murder. Despite his earlier confessions and the testimony of the court-appointed psychiatrist regarding his mental state, John continued to deny direct responsibility for his heinous actions. He maintained that his mental state at the time made him unaccountable for what had transpired, seeking forgiveness, understanding, and prayers from those affected by the tragedy. However, the judge presiding over the case was unmoved by John's plea. He saw through the attempt to evade responsibility and expressed his firm conviction that John List lacked remorse and honor for his actions. The judge recognized the gravity of the crimes committed against Helen, Alma, Patricia, Frederick, and John F. List, and stated that it was time for their voices to be heard, even from beyond the grave. Considering the extent of the suffering and loss inflicted upon the List family, the judge handed down a stern and unequivocal sentence. John List was to serve 5 terms of life imprisonment consecutively, the maximum permissible penalty at the time. This sentence would ensure that John would spend the rest of his life behind bars, paying for the tragic consequences of his actions. After his convictions, John List sought to appeal on the grounds that his judgment had been impaired by post-traumatic stress disorder resulting from his military service. He also attempted to argue that the letter he left behind at the crime scene, which essentially served as his confession, was a confidential communication to his pastor and therefore should not have been admissible as evidence. However, these arguments were ultimately rejected by a federal appeals court and his convictions were upheld. As the years passed, John's perspective seemed to evolve. In a 2002 interview with Connie Chung, he expressed a degree of remorse for his heinous crimes, acknowledging that he deeply regretted what he had done and had been seeking forgiveness ever since. When asked why he had not taken his own life following the murders, John revealed a chilling belief. He believed that suicide would prevent him from reuniting with his family in heaven, where he hoped to be reconciled with them. List died of complications from pneumonia at age 82 on March 21, 2008, while imprisoned at St. Francis Medical Center in Trenton, New Jersey. The case of John List continues to captivate and haunt the public imagination, serving as a haunting reminder of the depths of human behavior and the devastating consequences of unchecked emotions and untreated mental health issues. What led this man to commit such unspeakable acts? Could the pressure of financial struggles and family troubles truly justify the unimaginable violence that unfolded within those walls? Let us know your thoughts down below.